operations so that we all remember how to do that. And then do a couple problems. Alright, so order of operations, you can think of germs, GEMDAS, PEMDAS, sure, any of those. But we want to think grouping or parentheses first. So grouping can be a bunch of different things. Parentheses, square brackets, curly brackets. Ignore my curly brackets. One's supposed to be the opposite way. I can never get the other one to do what it's supposed to do. So like if you were looking on Desmos or your computer or something like that, I don't know if I have it on here. It's a curly bracket. I can draw one, I can't draw the other. Your ER is your exponents and radicals. Radicals being your square roots, your cube roots, your nth roots. And then the M or the D is multiplying or dividing, whichever comes first, reading left to right. So I think a lot of confusion happens there because most people think multiply before divide, but it's whichever comes first when you're reading left to right. And then same thing with addition or subtraction. So I often, usually I write PEMDAS, but I usually write it as to show whichever comes first. Alright, so I want you to do a couple of these problems and then we'll come back and we'll talk about them. Using these, you're grouping your exponents and radicals, you're multiplying, dividing, you're adding and subtracting. I want you to try these two. Whoa. Try again. And then we'll come back and talk about them. So, yes, you're on Desmos, but I want you to try it by hand and double check it by Desmos because you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff by hand. And then using Desmos for practice only. So try those two. Talk with the people around you. See if you got the same answer. So I have how you should have done this on the board, and then if you double check it in Desmos, I know some of you saw you got the incorrect answer, some of you got the correct answer. So let's talk about why, what questions we have, and things like that. All right. So here, our order of operations say grouping first, so we have to do what's inside the parentheses. On the inside of the parentheses, we have addition and multiplication, so we have to multiply first. So multiply to get that negative 12. Then we're still dealing with inside the grouping, so we have to combine those two to get the negative 10. Then we have nothing else to do inside grouping, so we have to do our exponents. Here, when you take something and you square it, you have to, if you're putting it in your calculator, put it on the outside. So put a negative in parentheses and put it on the outside, put the square on the outside. You get a positive. Think about this like negative 10 times negative 10. You're going to get a positive. if you put this negative 10 squared, you're going to get a negative because this is really saying negative 1 times 10 squared. It's two different things. So it should be a positive. Then multiplication, multiply the negative 3 and 100, and then subtraction. So negative 305 should have been that correct answer. What questions do we have on that? The second one I asked you to do, there are some things you can do at the same time. So we have grouping, we also have exponents and radicals. So in order to do what's inside this grouping, we have to do what's in this radical. Because this set of exponents is really by itself, I'm not doing anything with it yet. I can do this at the same time I do the radical, the square root of 16. So that's why this became 16 and this became 4. So for that same reason that we just talked about in negative 10 squared, this became a positive 16. Now we're dealing with grouping, so what's on the inside of the parentheses, subtract those. Then multiplication, so multiply 16 and negative 2. Then we have a division problem, but we can't divide until we've simplified the numerator. So simplify the numerator, then divide. So negative 17 should have been that final answer. Do you have questions on either of those two? So we're not going to get to a bunch of evaluating stuff today. That'll probably be more like Tuesday. But I wanted to walk you through some calculator / desmos stuff so that when we start evaluating, you know where these things are. You can use them all the time. We multiplied 16 and negative 2. So on your calculator page, I want you to write down these things, whatever you feel like is going to be helpful. We're going to start with the calculator, and if time permits, do desmos stuff. Yes. Okay. So when I press different buttons on the calculator, I want you to do the same thing. That way you know how to do it, and then can write it down so that you can refresh your memory or go back to your notes and remember how to do it as well. So reset your calculator. We talked about this. I think so. Second plus 712. And then write that down on your calculator page. Second plus 712 is your reset. Plus 012. Second plus 712. So not on this, but on the calculator page that we'll complete. Let's say we go somewhere else, we hit a button by accident. So you don't have to hit y equals, but you can if you want to see the point I'm about to make. If you ever want to go back to the screen where you calculate stuff, second mode will take you back to that screen. Second mode. Take you back to, like, if you're anywhere else, it will always take you back to this screen where you will calculate stuff. The second button is for anything written in blue. The second button is for any blue words you see on the calculator. Like at the top. I have no idea what that actually says. Table set, format, calc, table, quit, ins, alloc, link, list, all the words. Right? Alpha will get all of the letters in green. We talked about how to put in variables. Alpha, y equals. We're really going into the F1 menu. But alpha, y equals. Will give you your fraction menu. You may want to maybe put a square around this button and write this is the negative. You only use that if you have to put in a negative first. If you need a minus, you use minus. Right? And then I'm going to show you a couple more things. You can type in the variable x a couple different ways. Alpha and then find x, or you can hit this button right next to alpha. The x, the t, this is theta and n. You want to circle that or put a box around it and say can be x. There are some obvious ones up here, like the x squared is for if anything you want to square. The parentheses if you want parentheses. If you want an exponent that is not squared, you can use, I'm going to call it a little caret, I don't know what it's actually called, this button above the division button. So if you press x and then press this, it will raise it into the exponent. And then you can put whatever number there you want.
And then how do you go back down?
So you have to put in a number first, and then if you hit to the right, then it will bring it back on. Right. If you hit clear, and let's say you type something and you just hit clear, it doesn't actually clear anything. Usually you're able to go back, but if you hit delete, that will actually clear it, get rid of it. If you miss something, so let's say I want to put...
Where's the delete button?
It's right by the left arrow, D-E-L. And that's the same button you're going to use for insert. So let's say I want to put 8 minus 6, but I really meant to put 8, 18. I'm going to scroll all the way to the left and hit second INS, that's insert. And then I can add in what? So that helps if you forget something. So second, delete or second INS will help you insert things. If you meant to put plus instead of minus, you could just hover over whatever it is and then change it right on top. You don't have to delete the whole thing.
Okay, so for changing the number, you put second?
To insert a number, second, delete.
Oh, second.
That's our exponents. Let's talk about, I mentioned this earlier, square root is in blue above the x squared. So how how would we get there?
Press second.
Press second, and then press x squared. And that will give you your square root. Your cube root, you have to go in a little bit different. So second x squared for the square root. If you go into math, literally the math button, that is where your cube root is. That's number 4. So math, and then number 4 for your cube root. Okay. If you ever forget where any of this stuff is, you can go into above 0, says catalog. So second catalog is a list of all the things we just said. Second 0 or second catalog. Do we have any general calculator questions? There'll be more things that we talked about over the year. Those are like the basics you need to know today. Alright, I'm going to give you like a couple Desmos ones and then we'll be done for today. So you may want to write this maybe on the back, maybe on the same side, doesn't matter. You are probably more used to the scientific Desmos, but we're going to be using the graphing calculator on Desmos. If the graph is ever hard to see, you can go into the wrench and hit, it used to be a thing called projector, but you can just choose this. The bigger A, it just makes everything bigger, easier to read. And then let's talk keyboard things. So in the keyboard that's on Desmos, you can see your variables, how to square something, how to change the exponent to something different, where your parentheses are, where your absolute value is. I didn't show that on the calculator, we'll do that a different day. Where your inequalities are, your square root, I'll show you where cube root is in a second. So you can use those buttons. You can also type in. So if you want an exponent, let's say I put X in on, if you were doing this on a computer, you could hit Shift and then 6, and it would raise it. Or you can just use this. If you missed this or didn't put square root, you could type in the letters SQRT. So I'll show you that. And it will transform to a square root. SQRT for square root. You could also do CBRT, and it would do a cube root. So that's one way to find the cube root. Type in those letters if you actually have a keyboard. The other way, here's where you can find the cube root. Go to functions. CBR. The functions. Scroll all the way down. And once you see number theory, it's this nth root. So when you put that in, you can put, alright, let's try that again. You can put whatever number you want there. Right? We'll talk more Desmos stuff on Tuesday and do some actual evaluating stuff on Tuesday. Right? Go ahead and, I don't remember how exactly to do this.